this work entitled Jew um, came as a response to your request to think about Chicago immigrants, artists, and when you came to me, you were thinking about Moholy-Nagy and me being involved in a research around him. And one of the things that have not been sort of addressed many times in the research around him was his Jewishness, something that sort of the family didn't want to disclose throughout the 20th century. Um, and uh, and the fact that he was a Jew, that he converted, uh, and I came across that while I was researching the work that he did with his first wife, who was also a Jew and a Czech Jew, like me, and a photographer. And so I thought about around, along these lines, and and created this neon that we installed in what was a shower or bathroom in the 6018 basement. That it sort of had the power to color the entire room of it, and like you can see here, you could see the room red before you actually could read what it says. But I felt, that was something that did address questions that I probably was asking in regards to my own Jewishness that was never really part of my work. Uh, and but I think over the last 4 years, the uh, racial question sort of started to being brought up more and more for me through living in Chicago, which placed me in a different racial um, relationship to my environment compared to living in Israel or living in Prague before. Um, and so, especially when bringing it down to the Chicago to the cultural center, I certainly saw it as such, as something that not necessarily uh, is anymore related to particular to the Chicago history with Moholy-Nagy or something like this, but rather to the larger questions of race and to the city. The neon that is blinking behind me, that hopefully if I make it tomorrow to the studio, it can be live. Was my first neon that I made for Chicago Cultural Center 5 years ago, and that sort of responds both uh, to the original work that was placed in the north entrance to the Chicago Cultural Center, Bruce Nauman's uh, uh, The Human Nature, and this piece, Chicago Nature, the neon is connected uh, to the Chicago Police radio and turns on when the dispatch is talking to the officers on the street, um, and within the Chicago urban environment, it sort of directly talks about race, and as as you can sort of quantify what's happening in the city, how the police is active, uh, which at the end in Chicago eventually leads to race and race discrimination. And so bring the Jew to the cultural center would have made a lot of sense. Uh, And yeah, I don't know if, in the sense of connecting it to what's happening right now, to the epidemic, that's that's something that Jews have a long, experience with what happens after the plague. That usually were the communities in Europe that were sort of blamed for it. I think what's happening today with Asian population and them being blamed for the virus. Uh, One of the things that made me think recently is also the economic situation of Jews in Europe and Asian Americans today as sort of the economically most stable groups at that moment. So I don't know where it's going to go, but in New York, it started. The epicenter was a Hasidic community in Israel, where they almost flattened the curve until the Orthodox Jew brought it back. And so you can see that even that is being sort of looked at along different racial um, and obviously religious lines.